The Great Hall of Thesser Prime was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds formed beneath it. Its walls were covered with the skulls of conquered species, thousands of them, each one a reminder of Veltari power. For 10,000 years, the Veltari Dominion had ruled this part of the galaxy. They were tall beings, standing 3 meters high, with gray skin like stone and 4 arms that could crush metal. They believed in one thing above all else: strength. Today, the hall was full. Warriors from 400 worlds had gathered to watch. Massive screens floated in the air so that 1,000 planets could see what would happen next. Archon Velthos, supreme ruler of the Dominion, sat on his throne of black iron. He was old, nearly 300 years, but his eyes were sharp and cruel. "Bring them forward," he commanded. The human ambassadors walked into the hall. There were 3 of them, dressed in simple gray uniforms. They looked so small compared to the Veltari warriors around them. Some of the aliens laughed. Others made sounds of disgust. Archon Velthos raised one of his 4 hands. The hall became silent. "For 50 years we have watched your species," he said. His voice echoed like thunder. "We have studied you. We have judged you. And now, the Dominion will declare what humanity truly is." He waved his hand, and images appeared on the floating screens. Videos of human ships running from battle. Videos of human leaders signing peace treaties. Videos of human soldiers carrying wounded enemies to safety instead of killing them. "Look at them," Velthos said. When the Krix raiders attacked their colonies, they negotiated. When the Thornback clans demanded tribute, they paid. When faced with superior force, they retreat. They evacuate. They surrender. The hall erupted in laughter. Thousands of Veltari warriors mocked the humans on the screens. "Today, I declare humanity to be what they truly are," Velthos announced. "Cowards. A race of frightened prey animals who somehow found their way to the stars. They are unworthy of the worlds they hold." The human ambassador, a woman named Cho Sun-hee, stood perfectly still. Her face showed nothing. She was 53 years old and had served Earth for 30 years. She had seen war. She had lost friends. She knew what the Veltari did not. "Therefore," Velthos continued, "the Dominion claims the Kepler 442 system, your richest farming colony. You have 30 rotations to remove your people. If you do not, we will remove them for you, permanently." He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "You may beg now, if you wish. We might show mercy." Admiral Cho Sun-hee stepped forward. The Veltari guards moved closer, ready to strike her down if she tried anything foolish. But she simply looked up at the Archon with calm eyes. "We decline," she said. The hall went quiet. "What did you say?" Velthos leaned forward on his throne. "We decline your offer. Kepler 442 is our home. Our people live there. Our children play there. Our ancestors are buried there." Her voice was steady and clear. "We will not give it to you." Velthos stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a terrible sound, like rocks grinding together. The whole hall joined him. The laughter went on and on. "You decline," he said finally. "A species that has never won a single war declines the mighty Veltari Dominion." He shook his head. "Very well. You have made your choice. In 30 rotations, your colony will burn. Your people will die. And the galaxy will see what happens to cowards who forget their place." Admiral Cho bowed her head slightly. "Then I have only one thing to say. Speak, little human. Let us hear your final words of foolishness." "Touch our people," she said quietly, "and you will learn what human cowardice really looks like." She turned and walked out of the hall. The other ambassadors followed her. Behind them, the Veltari laughed and cheered. Some threw things at them. Others made death threats. But the humans did not run. They did not cry. They walked with straight backs and steady steps until they reached their ship and flew away into the dark of space. That night, the Archon's message was broadcast to every world in the Dominion. Billions of aliens watched the humans being mocked. They saw the videos of human cowardice. They heard the Archon's declaration, and they laughed too. This would be the easiest conquest in Velthury history. A species of cowards against the greatest warriors the galaxy had ever known. But far away, on a blue and green world called Earth, no one was laughing Dot in a room deep beneath the mountains of Korea. Military leaders gathered around a holographic display. Captain Park Tae-ho watched the Archon's speech with cold eyes. He was 41 years old. His younger brother had died in the Titan uprising, killed by raiders while protecting a school full of children. Park knew what it meant to lose family. He knew what humans would do to prevent it. "They think we retreat because we are afraid," said General Moon, the oldest person in the room. "They are wrong," Park replied. "They will learn." General Moon pressed a button. The holographic display changed to show hundreds of red dots moving through space. The Velthury First Armada is already heading to Kepler 442, 1,200 warships. And our defense fleet? 40 vessels. Some of the younger officers looked worried. Park Tae-ho did not. "Pull them back," he said. "Get every civilian off that planet. Every child. Every grandmother. Every pet. I want that world empty when the Velthury arrive. And then?" Park turned to the window. Outside, he could see rows and rows of military ships. Thousands of them. And beyond them, training grounds where millions of soldiers prepared for war. Earth had never wanted to fight. Humans preferred peace. They preferred trade and friendship and cooperation. But when someone threatened their families, something old and terrible woke up inside them. Something that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed their world. Something that did not know how to quit. "Call them all," Park said quietly. "Every Marine. Every soldier. Every pilot. Wake up the veterans. Open the reserves. Send word to every colony." He turned back to the room, and his eyes were hard as stone. The Velthury want to know what humans do when they cannot retreat. They want to know what happens when there is no peace to negotiate. They want to see human cowardice. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Let us show them." In the silence that followed, Admiral Cho Sun-hee entered the room. She had just returned from Thesser Prime. Her uniform was still dusty from the journey. "How long?" she asked. 29 days until they reached Kepler 442. She nodded slowly. "That is enough time." She looked at the map showing Earth's forces. The Velthury have forgotten something important. They think cowardice and wisdom are the same thing. They think we avoid war because we fear death. And the truth? Park asked. Admiral Cho looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death and still remained strong. "We avoid war because we know what we become when we stop avoiding it." Across the galaxy, fleets began to move. Messages flew between colonies. Soldiers kissed their families goodbye. The Velthury thought they were hunting prey. They had no idea what was coming. The Velthury First Armada dropped out of hyperspace like a storm of death. 1,200 warships filled the sky above Kepler 442b. Each ship was bigger than a small city. Their weapons could turn mountains into dust. War Master Krathvalum stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Fury, and looked down at the small blue world below. "Scan for human defenses," he ordered. His officers worked quickly. The results came back in seconds. 40 human vessels in orbit, War Master. They are retreating. Krathvalum watched the human ships turn and run. They moved fast, faster than he expected, heading away from the planet toward the outer system. Behind them came hundreds of smaller ships. civilian transports, evacuation vessels. The humans were running away and taking their people with them. He laughed. Just as the Archon said, "Cowards. They do not even pretend to fight." He waved his hand. "Let them go. We will hunt them later. For now, begin the landing." Thousands of dropships fell from the Velthari fleet like metal rain. They carried the finest warriors in the Dominion, soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds. Each one was excited. This would be an easy victory. They would crush the humans, take their planet, and return home as heroes. The dropships landed in the capital city. Velthari soldiers poured out, weapons ready, eager for battle. They found nothing. The streets were empty. The buildings were dark. Food still sat on tables, growing cold. Children's toys lay abandoned in parks. It was like everyone had simply vanished. Krathvalmer received a report on his bridge. "The city is empty, War Master. No humans anywhere. They left everything behind. Search everywhere. They must be hiding." For hours, the Velthari searched. They broke into homes. They checked underground shelters. They scanned for life signs. Nothing. The entire planet had been evacuated. 2 million humans had disappeared in less than 3 weeks. Krathvalum sent a message to Archon Velthos. "Victory, my lord. The humans have fled. Kepler 442 belongs to the Dominion." The Archon's response came quickly. "Excellent. Establish occupation zones. Let the galaxy see how easily we took their world." That night, the Velthari celebrated. They drank strong wine and told stories of their easy conquest. They laughed about the cowardly humans who ran without fighting. Krathvalum himself joined the celebration, toasting to the glory of the Dominion. None of them noticed the shadows moving in the darkness. Outside, Lieutenant Kan Mi-young had been on this planet for 2 weeks. She and her reconnaissance team had stayed behind when everyone else evacuated. 23 Marines hidden in caves and tunnels, watching and waiting. They called her the Ghost because enemies never saw her coming. "Patrol approaching," whispered Corporal Beek Jinho. He was the team's demolitions expert, a quiet man with steady hands. 6 Velthari. Standard formation. Kang studied them through her scope. The aliens were big and strong, but they walked carelessly. They thought they were safe. They thought they had won. "Take them," she said softly. It was over in seconds. No shots fired. No screams. Just silence and 6 empty suits of armor lying on the ground. The bodies were hidden before anyone could notice. Across the planet, similar scenes played out. Velthari patrols went out and did not come back. Communication posts went dark. Supply depots exploded. By morning, the Velthari had lost 300 soldiers, and they did not know how or why. Krathvalum received the reports with growing anger. How is this possible? Find these attackers and kill them. His officers tried. They sent larger patrols. They set up sensors and traps. But the humans were like smoke. They struck and disappeared. Struck and disappeared. One night, a Velthari general was killed in his own bed, his guards unconscious outside the door. The assassin left no trace except a small note that said, "You should not have come here." Fear began to spread among the Velthari soldiers. This was not what they expected. This was not an easy victory against cowards. Something was very wrong. Then, on the 5th day, everything changed. Krathvalum was in his command center when alarms began screaming. His officers looked at their screens with wide eyes. "War Master. Hyperspace signatures. Massive hyperspace signatures. How many ships?" The officers' hands were shaking. 3,000 War Master. Human warships. And they are heading directly for us. Krathvalum felt something he had not felt in 200 years of war. He felt afraid. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like an army of angry stars. 3,000 vessels of every size, from small fighters to massive carriers. And behind them, transport ships carrying the largest invasion force the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Cho Sun-hee stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UECF Indomitable. Captain Park Tae-ho stood beside her. They looked at the Velthary fleet, still gathered in orbit around Kepler 442b. "Open a channel," Cho said. "All frequencies." The communication officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Cho's voice went out across space, reaching every Velthary ship, every human vessel, every relay station that would carry her words to the watching galaxy. "This is Admiral Cho Sun-hee of the United Earth Coalition. You are occupying our world. You have threatened our people. You called us cowards." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was cold as ice. "Thank you for gathering your forces in one place. We brought enough for everyone." The human fleet began to move forward. Not slowly, not carefully. They charged straight at the Velthary line at full speed, weapons hot, ready to fight. Krathvalum watched them come. In all his years of war, he had never seen anything like it. The humans were outnumbered. They should be running. Instead, they were attacking. "What are they doing?" One of his officers whispered. "They are insane," another said. But Krathvalum understood now. He understood what the Dominion had missed. The humans had not been running from fear. They had been saving their civilians, getting the innocent people out of the way. And now that the civilians were safe, now there was nothing holding the humans back. "All ships," Krathvalum commanded, his voice steady despite his fear. "Prepare for battle." Private Lee Ha-na was 19 years old. She sat in a dropship with 40 other Marines, waiting to descend into hell. Her parents had lived on Kepler 442b. They had refused to evacuate, staying behind to help others escape. The Velthary had found them and killed them. She was not afraid. She was not angry. She was something worse. She was focused. Sergeant Yoon Woo-jin sat across from her. He was older, a veteran of 3 campaigns. He saw the look in her eyes and recognized it. "First combat drop?" he asked. "Yes, Sergeant." He nodded slowly. "Stay close to me. Do what I do. And remember why we fight." "Why do we fight, Sergeant?" He checked his weapon one final time, so that no one else has to. The dropship shook as it launched from the carrier. Through the small window, Hana could see explosions lighting up the darkness of space. Human ships and Velthary ships locked in battle. Fire everywhere. Death everywhere. But the dropships kept going. Down through the chaos. Down toward the planet. Down to show the Velthary what human cowardice really looked like. The sky was on fire. Human dropships fell through clouds of smoke and plasma, their pilots flying through hell itself to reach the ground. Velthary defense cannons shot down dozens of them. Hundreds of Marines died before they even touched the soil. But the rest kept coming. Nothing could stop them. 800,000 Marines landed in the first wave. They did not stop to build defenses. They did not wait for orders. They attacked. Sergeant Yoon Woo-jin led his squad toward a Velthary command post. Intelligence said 2,000 enemy soldiers held it. His squad had 43 Marines. "Sergeant," one of his soldiers said, "there are too many of them." Yoon looked at the young man with tired eyes. "There are always too many. That is why we brought heavy weapons." The assault began at dawn. Yoon's squad hit the command post from 3 directions at once. They used explosives to blow open the walls. They used smoke grenades to blind the defenders. And then they went in room by room, corridor by corridor, fighting for every meter. The Velthary were strong. One of them could lift a human with a single arm and break them in half. But the humans were fast. They moved like water, flowing around attacks, striking weak points, working together like parts in a single machine. Private Lee Hana killed her first enemy in a dark hallway. He was 3 times her size, but she was quicker. She shot him twice in the knee, making him fall, then finished him with a shot to the head. She did not feel proud. She did not feel sick. She just moved to the next room and kept fighting. After 6 hours, the command post was silent. Yoon stood in the control room, surrounded by dead Velthari. His squad had lost 11 Marines. The enemy had lost all 2,000. "Send the signal," he said. "Position secure." Across the planet, similar battles raged. Humans fought with a fury the Velthari had never imagined. They charged into gunfire. They used their bodies to shield wounded friends. They kept fighting even with terrible injuries. Gunnery Sergeant Shin Dong-hyun was 47 years old. He had been a Marine for almost 30 years. His officers had tried to promote him many times, but he always refused. He did not want to sit in a comfortable office giving orders. He wanted to be with his soldiers, in the dirt and the blood, where he could protect them. His platoon was pinned down by heavy fire. Velthari vehicles blocked the only road forward. Behind them were wounded Marines who could not move. "We need to clear that road," Shin said to his radio. "Send support." The response crackled back. "No support available. You need to hold your position." Shin looked at his soldiers. Young men and women, scared but determined. He looked at the wounded behind them, bleeding and dying. He made his decision. "Stay here," he told his platoon. "Keep the wounded safe." "Sergeant, what are you doing?" Shin picked up his rifle and 2 extra ammunition packs. "My job." He walked out into the open road, directly toward the Velthari line. Enemy fire exploded around him. He did not run. He did not hide. He walked forward, shooting calmly and accurately, dropping enemy soldiers with every shot. The Velthari could not believe what they were seeing. One human alone walking toward 200 warriors. They concentrated their fire on him. Plasma bolts hit his armor. Shrapnel cut his face and arms. But he kept walking. He reached the first vehicle and threw a grenade inside. The explosion killed the crew. He moved to the next vehicle and did the same. Then the next. Then the next dot. By the time reinforcements arrived, Shin had destroyed 7 vehicles and killed 63 enemies. He was still standing, covered in blood, most of it not his own. When they tried to take him to the medics, he refused. "There are still enemies ahead," he said. "I will rest when the fighting is over." Lieutenant Kang Mi-young was supposed to evacuate. She had been shot in the side during a firefight, and the wound was serious. Her commanding officer ordered her to fall back to the medical ship's dot. She did not go. Her platoon was cut off behind enemy lines. Worse, they had found a group of human civilians who had hidden in underground tunnels during the invasion. 37 people, including 12 children. The Velthari were hunting them. "We hold here," Kang told her soldiers. "No one gets past us." They found a good position in an old factory building. 61 Marines against an unknown number of enemies. The civilians huddled in the basement, terrified. The first attack came at sunset. 300 Velthari rushed their position. The Marines cut them down with disciplined fire. The second attack came at midnight. 500 enemies. More Marines died, but the line held dot by morning. Kang had lost 20 soldiers, but they had killed over 1,000 enemies. "Lieutenant," her radio crackled. "This is command. Relief force is 12 hours away. Can you hold?" Kang looked at her remaining Marines, exhausted, wounded, running low on ammunition. She looked at the basement door where the children were hiding. "We will hold," she said. The attacks kept coming. Wave after wave of Velthari, determined to break through. Kang fought at the front line, shooting until her rifle overheated, then using her pistol, then using her knife when the enemies got too close. She took a plasma bolt to the chest in the 19th hour. The impact threw her against a wall and burned through her armor. She could not breathe. She could not see. But she could hear the children crying in the basement below. She forced herself to stand. "Not yet," she whispered. "Not while they still need me." She picked up a fallen soldier's rifle and kept fighting. When the relief force finally arrived, they found Kang still standing at the window, firing at enemies who had finally begun to retreat. Her armor was destroyed. Her body was covered in wounds. She had been shot 3 times and stabbed twice. But she was alive. Behind her, all 37 civilians were safe, including all 12 children. Medic Oh Yumbai was the first to reach her. She caught Kang as the lieutenant finally collapsed. "You are insane," Yumbai said. "You should be dead." Kang smiled weakly. "Tell the children. Tell them they are safe now." Across the battlefield, a wounded Velthari officer watched the human medics work. He had been shot in the leg and could not move. He expected the humans to kill him. Instead, a small human woman knelt beside him and began treating his wound. "Why?" he asked in broken human language. "I am enemy. I would kill you." Meg Oh Yumbai looked at him with calm eyes. "Because we are not monsters," she said. "That is the difference you never understood. We do not enjoy killing. We do not celebrate death. We fight because we must, not because we want to." She finished bandaging his leg and called for soldiers to take him to the prisoner camp. The Velthari officer lay there, staring at the sky. In 200 years of war, he had never seen anything like these humans. They fought like demons, but showed mercy like saints. They charged into certain death, but stopped to save enemies. For the first time in his life, he wondered if his people had made a terrible mistake. Above the planet, the space battle raged on. Human ships crashed into Velthari formations, fighting at ranges so close that crews could see into enemy windows. Admiral Cho commanded from her bridge, calm and steady while fire exploded all around her. "Status report," she said. "We have broken their main formation, Admiral. Their fleet is retreating to regroup." Captain Park Taiho stood beside her, watching the tactical display. "We have them running." "Not enough," Cho replied. "They will return with more ships. We need to end this war, not win one battle." She looked at the star map, at the distant point that marked the Velthari homeworld. "If they want to know what humans do when we cannot run," she said quietly, "then we will show them." Park understood immediately. "You want to attack Desert Prime. I want to finish this, once and for all." It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly what the humans did best. Park nodded slowly. "I will prepare the assault force." No species had ever attacked the Velthari homeworld. For 10,000 years, Desert Prime had been untouchable. Its defenses were legendary. Orbital stations armed with weapons that could destroy moons. A home fleet of 5,000 warships. Ground forces numbering in the hundreds of millions. To attack it was suicide. The humans attacked it anyway. Admiral Cho led the strike force personally. She took 500 of her fastest ships and left the rest to secure Kepler 442. They jumped through hyperspace on a path that no sane commander would choose, flying close to unstable stars and through dangerous asteroid fields. Many ships were lost on the journey. She did not stop Dot when they emerged near Desert Prime. The Velthari home fleet was waiting. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "we are outnumbered 10 to 1. I can count, Lieutenant." Cho's voice was calm. "Launch the dropships. All of them." "Admiral, we cannot hold them off long enough for a full ground assault." "We do not need to hold them off. We just need to get our people down." The human fleet charged directly at the Valkyrie line. Not to win, not to survive, just to create chaos. Just to open a path for the dropships carrying 12,000 Marines toward the planet below. Captain Park Tae-ho was on the lead dropship. He watched through the window as human ships exploded around them, giving their lives to protect the landing force. "Hold on," the pilot announced. "This is going to be rough." The dropship shook violently as it entered the atmosphere. Defensive fire filled the sky like deadly rain. Park saw 3 dropships next to him explode in bowls of fire. But his ship made it through. His ship hit the ground hard outside the capital city, and the doors opened. "Move!" Park shouted. Everyone move. 12,000 Marines poured out onto the soil of the Valkyrie homeworld. 12,000 humans on a planet of billions. It was the most insane thing any military force had ever attempted. But they had one advantage. The Valkyrie never expected anyone to be crazy enough to try this. Their defenses were built to stop fleets, not small groups of soldiers. And these were not ordinary soldiers. These were Earth's frontline Marines. They moved fast, using the confusion to push deep into the capital. Their target was simple: the Archon's palace. Not to capture it, not to hold it, just to send a message that nowhere in the galaxy was safe from human response. Gunnery Sergeant Shin Dong-hyun led the advance team. His wounds from Kepler 442 had barely healed, but he refused to stay behind. When his commanding officer ordered him to rest, he simply said, "My soldiers are fighting. I will be with them." Now he was deep inside the palace, fighting through corridors filled with the Archon's elite guards. These were the best soldiers the Dominion had, warriors who had trained their entire lives for combat. Shin killed 6 of them in the first minute. "Keep moving," he told his squad. "We stop when we reach the throne room." They pushed forward, room by room, taking casualties but never slowing down. Shin was everywhere, covering retreats, dragging wounded soldiers to safety, always the last one to fall back. He had taken 5 wounds by the time they reached the inner palace. He ignored them all. Then they hit a checkpoint that would not break. A single corridor, heavily defended, the only path to the throne room. The Valkyrie had concentrated their forces there. Hundreds of elite guards supported by heavy weapons. "We cannot get through," one of his soldiers said. "There are too many." Shin looked at the corridor. He looked at his squad. He made his decision. "Take the wounded and fall back to the secondary position," he said. "I will hold this corridor. Sergeant, that is suicide. That is an order." His voice left no room for argument. "Tell Captain Park that the path will be clear in 40 minutes. He will understand." His squad did not want to leave him. But they were soldiers, and soldiers follow orders. They took the wounded and fell back. Shin watched them go. Then he turned to face the corridor alone. He fought for 47 minutes. The Valkyrie sent wave after wave against him. He used every weapon he had, every trick he had learned in 30 years of war. He took cover behind fallen enemies. He used their own grenades against them. When his ammunition ran out, he picked up Valkyrie weapons and kept shooting. They shot him 9 times. He kept fighting. When Captain Park finally led the breakthrough team through the corridor, they found Shin sitting against the wall, barely conscious. Around him lay 118 dead Valkyrie soldiers. "Sergeant," Park knelt beside him. "Can you hear me?" Shin opened his eyes slowly. "Is everyone through? Did my soldiers make it?" "Yes, everyone made it." Shin smiled. "Good, that is good." Then he lost consciousness. The medics rushed to save him while the rest of the Marines continued toward the throne room. They blasted through the final doors and found themselves facing Archon Velthus himself, surrounded by his last guards. "Stop," Park commanded. "This ends now." Velthos stared at the humans with disbelief. His palace was burning. His guards were dead. Humans stood in his throne room, something that had never happened in the history of his species. How? He whispered. How is this possible? Private Lihana was the first Marine through the door. The young woman from Kepler 442, whose parents had been killed by the Volturi invasion. She had fought across 2 worlds to reach this moment. She had every right to want revenge. Instead, she heard crying Dot in a small room next to the throne. She found Volturi children, young ones barely out of infancy. They were huddled together, terrified by the sounds of battle. Dot. Hana lowered her weapon. She stood at the doorway, blocking any stray fire from entering. She stayed there while the negotiations happened, while guards were disarmed and prisoners were taken. She protected those children like they were her own. A Volturi historian was recording everything. He would later write that this moment taught him more about humans than 1,000 battles ever could. The negotiations were tense. Admiral Cho had arrived, brought down from orbit after the human fleet managed to fight the Volturi home fleet to a standstill. She stood before the Archon, a small human woman facing the ruler of 400 worlds. You have lost, she said simply. Your fleet is broken. Your palace is ours. Your guards are dead. You can surrender now, or we can continue fighting until there is nothing left. And if I surrender? Velthos asked. What do you demand? Our worlds? Our wealth? Will you make slaves of my people? Before Cho could answer, a Volturi general standing nearby drew a hidden blade from his armor. He lunged at Cho, aiming for her throat, screaming that he would never surrender to cowards. The shot came from 3 kilometers away. Master Sergeant An-Ki-Tae had set up his position hours ago, finding a clear line of sight to the throne room. He had waited patiently, watching through his scope, ready for exactly this moment. When the general moved, An fired. The round crossed the distance in 2.3 seconds. It hit the general in the shoulder, spinning him around and dropping him to the ground. The blade stopped 6 centimeters from Cho's throat. She did not even flinch. She looked at the fallen general, then back at Archon Velthos. Her expression had not changed. Shall we continue? She asked. Velthos stared at her, at the wounded general, at the Marines standing ready, at the distant tower where the sniper had made an impossible shot. For the first time in 300 years, he understood that he had lost. Not just the battle, not just the war. He had lost because he had completely misunderstood his enemy. These humans were not cowards. They were something far more terrifying. They were patient. They were precise. And they were absolutely relentless when protecting their own. What are your terms? He asked quietly. Admiral Cho told him. And what she demanded shocked him more than any military defeat ever could. The terms of surrender were broadcast across the galaxy. 1,000 worlds watched. Billions of beings waited to hear what the humans would demand from the broken Volturi Dominion. They expected demands for territory. They expected demands for money. They expected slavery and humiliation and all the things that conquering empires always demanded. That was how war worked. The winner took everything. Admiral Cho Sun-hee spoke clearly into the camera. The United Earth Coalition demands the following from the Volturi Dominion. First, immediate withdrawal from all human worlds. Second, release of all human prisoners. Third, a formal apology broadcast to every world that heard the original insult against our people. She paused. The galaxy waited. That is all. Silence. Across countless worlds, beings stared at their screens in confusion. That was all? No demands for tribute? No seizure of planets? The humans had broken the mightiest empire in the galaxy, and they wanted nothing more than an apology? Archon Velthos himself could not understand. You could take everything, he said to Admiral Cho. Our worlds, our resources, our technology. We have no power to stop you. Why do you not take what is yours by right of conquest? Captain Park Tae-ho answered him. Because victory is not about what you take. It is about what you protect. We came here to bring our people home. That is all we ever wanted. Veltha shook his head slowly. In 10,000 years, no species has ever defeated us and asked for so little. I do not understand you humans. No, Park agreed. You do not. And that is why you lost. The formal surrender was signed 3 days later. Velthari forces withdrew from Kepler 442. Human prisoners were released. And Archon Velthos himself appeared on galactic broadcast to deliver the apology his empire had been forced to make. We called humanity cowards, he said. His voice was heavy with something that might have been shame. We believed that avoiding war was weakness. We were wrong. He paused, struggling with words that his people had never needed to speak before. The humans are not cowards. They are something else. Something we did not understand until it was too late. But the war was not truly over until Lieutenant Kang Mi-young stood before the Galactic Council. She had recovered from her wounds, though she would carry scars for the rest of her life. She walked slowly to the speaking platform, and billions of beings watched. I am here to honor the fallen, she said, not to celebrate victory. She opened a small device and began to read names. Marine Private Kim Sung-ho, Marine Corporal Baek Jin-ho, Marine Sergeant Oh Tae-young, Marine Lieutenant Hong Soo-jin. Name after name. Human names. She read them slowly, clearly, giving each one the respect it deserved. The council chamber was silent. No one spoke. No one moved. Marine Private Kwon Sung-ho, who lost his arm in combat but refused to leave the fight. Marine Medic Lim Da-ji, who died protecting wounded soldiers. Marine Gunnery Sergeant Shin Dong-hyan, who held a corridor alone for 47 minutes. 6 hours. She read names for 6 hours. Thousands of names. Every Marine who died. Every soldier who gave their life. Every family that would never be whole again. When she finally finished, her voice was hoarse and her eyes were wet with tears. But she stood straight and proud. This is the cost of war, she said. This is what we paid to bring our people home. Remember these names. Remember what happens when beings who want only peace are forced to fight. She stepped down from the platform and walked out of the chamber. The galaxy watched her go in complete silence. In the months that followed, something strange began to happen among the Velthari. A poet named Kreshtal wrote an epic about the war. He called it The Ones Who Run Toward Danger. It told the story of the human Marines from the Velthari perspective, trying to understand how such a small species had defeated such a mighty empire. The poem became famous. It was taught in Velthari schools. Young warriors studied it, trying to understand what they could learn from the humans. The lesson was simple, but hard for the Velthari to accept. The humans were not strong because they loved fighting. They were strong because they loved each other. They fought to protect their families, their children, their homes. That love made them unstoppable. 1 year after the war ended, a memorial was built on Kepler 442b. It stood in a quiet field where the worst fighting had taken place. Names were carved into black stone, thousands of them. Human names on one side, Velthari names on the other. Gunnery Sergeant Shin Dong-hyan came to the dedication ceremony. He was in a wheelchair now, his body finally paying the price for decades of war. But his eyes were clear and his back was straight. He wore his dress uniform, covered with medals he had never wanted. Sergeant Lee Hana walked beside him. She was no longer a frightened private. She had been promoted twice and now led her own squad. But she still remembered the girl she had been. the one who had protected Velthari children while her heart burned with grief for her parents. "How do you feel?" Shin asked her. Hane looked at the memorial, at the names carved in stone. "Sad," she said honestly, "but also proud. We did the right thing, even when it was hard." Shin nodded slowly. "That is all any soldier can hope for." Then something remarkable happened. Archon Velthus himself arrived at the ceremony. He came without guards, without ceremony, just an old ruler who had learned a hard lesson. He walked to the memorial and placed a warrior's tribute at its base, the highest honor a Velthari could give. He stood there for a long moment, reading the names. Then he turned to Sergeant Shin.